let's talk about the movie Straw. Or more than that, let's just talk about the last straw and what so many people deal with on a day to day basis. People are snapping left and right. And we all know that there are times when the pressure just simply gets to be too much. What do we do when the world beats you up? When every time you turn around, something is going wrong. Now, in that movie, and I'm not really here to talk about what happened in the movie and whether I thought it was a good movie or anything like that. It just made me start thinking about things that have transpired in my life. Many of you know that prior to going into the financial institutions, that I was a social worker for over 20 years. And I've seen so many things and been through so many things with people that I understand what it feels like when you have reached your limit. When the world just keeps throwing things and throwing things and throwing things at you, and you just don't have the ability to dodge another bullet. What do we do? What can we do to prevent us from snapping, from detaching from reality, from doing things that are only going to create more harm for us? What do we do? How do we survive? How do we continue to function under those circumstances? Now, although this movie was fictional, anybody that was raised by a single mom that has had struggles or a single dad that has had struggles, we all could relate to some form of that movie. Something that happened, something that someone talked about, even if you hadn't watched it. I'm certain that many of you have heard about it. All through TikTok, all they talked about is how they cried throughout the entire movie because everything was happening to this lady just all at once. And then we get to the end and find out that she has, in actuality, had a mental break of sorts, and things were exacerbated by her mental health. And the truth of the matter is, I don't think she was diagnosed with anything. I just think that life had gotten the best of her. And that was the end of the rope for her. That was as much as she can take. And today, in this world, in real life, people are at the end of their ropes. And they just simply don't know what to do. And to be honest with you guys, much of that comes from childhood trauma. We all have trauma. Intentional trauma, where someone has actually done something to you, and unintentional trauma, where you may have witnessed something when the person in your life was doing the very best that they could with what they had, and they thought that they were doing a good thing. I have a similar circumstance. You could not have told me that I wasn't the best mom in the world. I gave my children everything. I did everything that I thought was right. I took care of them. I provided for them. I did a lot of things for them. But I sacrificed a lot of myself in doing that. And in making those sacrifices, I ultimately sacrificed some things for my children because I was working so hard. I couldn't be as loving, or I couldn't be as patient, or I couldn't be as understanding because the world was beating me up too. I too am a single mom. I talked to you guys in my videos about having a village. I had a village. I had my mom. I had my grandparents. I had my family and friends. But at the end of the day, those children were in the house with me. And anything that I was going through, they could feel it. Now, I didn't deal with evictions and, I had a good job, a decent job. Nobody was screaming and yelling at me on a day-to-day basis, but I was dealing with the trauma that was impacting other people. And I would say every day, but for the grace of God, would be me. And now that my children are adults and we can have, real conversations, they needed more hugs. They needed more love. They needed more understanding. And I just did not think that I was neglecting them in any way. And what I said to them is that mom did the best she could with what she had. Now let's go back 47 years. I got my own trauma. I witnessed some things growing up that created this mindset for me that there were certain things that I had to do because I would never find myself in a situation that my mom found herself in. That's trauma. That is trauma. I was running from something or trying to make sure that something didn't happen, that there was no reason for me to believe that that would happen to me. But because I witnessed it, because I experienced it, because it was a part of my life and what I had to go through, I was hell-bent on it not happening to me and my children. And lo and behold, I ended up doing some things that, didn't necessarily benefit them as much as I thought it would. Now, my children have grown up to be responsible adults and everything is fine and we have a great relationship. But thinking what I was doing was absolute, and I was, mom of the year, only to find out that wasn't absolutely the way the children saw it, was heartbreaking for me. And I have apologized and tried to change and do the things that need to be done so that my children can continue to be adults and that this doesn't trickle over into their relationships with their children. But nevertheless, it's trauma. It's all trauma. Now, many of us have been victims and have felt like victims, and so many things have happened to us. But we may have been victims as children, but we have now grown up and we know better. We have to try and do better when we know better. I was very fortunate because I didn't deal with the same type of trauma that Taraji dealt with in that movie, because in seeing some of those things, I don't know that I would have been able to recover from that, because there were some things that I did go through that was a real struggle for me, and the things that she went through were horrific. And there are some kids on my caseload that I still stay in contact with, and many of them are doing the same things that their parents did, that they swore they would never do. They're now doing to their own children. And I just think that childhood trauma, when it's not healed, history repeats itself. And you don't even realize you're doing it. It's subconscious. You don't even realize that you're doing it. I had a conversation with one of the girls this week. She was recently evicted. Somebody slashed the tires on her car, and she was cutting up and posting it on Facebook. And what I noticed in the background, she now has 5 children of her own. What I noticed in the background was that the children were just standing there watching her crash out. That is trauma. And that is teaching those children how they need to conduct themselves when faced with a situation like that. And all I can see is that those 5 children are watching their mom crash out. There's nothing that they can do about it. All of these circumstances are beyond both of their controls, but the apartment complex doesn't care that your tires were slashed. This is eviction day. This is the day that you have to get out. And whether you can load your stuff in your car or somebody else's car, that stuff has to be loaded up and you have to go. All while you are having a whole meltdown because one more thing has happened and your children are witnessing it. I hate more than anything that her children had to witness that, and that one day they will emulate the way she handles stress and things like that. But unfortunately, that's how the cycle continues. Even though we want to do better for our children, sometimes we just don't realize that we continue to do the things that are creating problems. Now, what I had to learn is that our parents are just people that don't have, or that didn't have, the information or some of the resources that some of us have today. And for that, they need to be given grace. We need to understand that many of our parents did the best they could with what they had. Even if you were the victim of someone else, a teacher, or, and when I say victim, I don't mean anything physically happening. I mean, emotional things like that. Sometimes they just don't know how to deal. Or sometimes, things have happened to them and we end up, unintentionally being involved, in that, the child that was afraid to speak up and that was never called on. Now they don't know how to articulate their feelings and what they need. The child that constantly had to apologize because they were getting in trouble for something that people misunderstood. Many of us are walking around dealing with adults as those children, simply because we were never given the tools necessary to be able to do better than our parents or the people that may have, and I'm using the word victim, but I'm using that word lightly because none of us are victims. We are survivors. We have all survived. We are thriving. We are trying to thrive. And we don't want to let our actions cause others to be victims of, the same circumstance. Many of us are our parents. And sadly, when history repeats itself, it just keeps going and going and going. So I'm going to encourage each and every one of you that if you have been made aware of a circumstance or a situation that you need to work on for your sake and all those that love you, you definitely need to work on those things. And we need to understand that although we are walking around as that child, we grew up. We survived. And we're no longer dealing with that thing that keeps popping up in our head, bothering us, and it keeps coming, to us and triggering us and causing us to react a certain way. We survived. And although life is very difficult these days, all sorts of things are happening. And I wish I had some good news for you, but I don't think it's going to get any better anytime soon. I think the economy is going to get worse. I think homelessness is going to increase. I think it's going to be harder and harder to make ends meet day for day based on what I can see going forward. And if you're not prepared for it or mentally capable to deal with it, I can understand how that could be extremely stressful. I understand how it can be stressful. I'm so worried about my girl and her kids because I don't know where she's going to live. I don't know if she was able to get her car towed. I don't know any of that. And I know that every bit of that is weighing heavily on her children. And I know because she's dealing with trying to keep a roof over their head and food on the table and clothes on their back with nobody to help her, I know that that is impacting those children without her even realizing, the impact that she's having on them. Because as parents, we don't take time to think about the impact of our actions because the acts continue to happen over and over again. My granddaddy used to say, when it rains, it pours. Now, you guys know that I'm a firm believer in the fact that we create the life that we want and that we do have some control over some of the things that happen to us. But many people don't feel that way and they don't know what to do. So I'm asking you guys, most of you are seasoned. I'm talking to my nieces and nephews here that still have little children or kids that are growing up in those developmental stages. Be mindful of your actions and how they impact your children. And even if you have to talk to them as adults, like I had to with my kids once, my bubble was bursting. I'm not mommy of the year. And that's no real surprise to me. I have known that I have had issues for a very long time. And I waited until I was 50 years old to get into therapy and to try to do something about it. And every now and then, that mean bitch will creep back up and something will trigger me. And, I have to catch myself. I have to talk to myself and I have to bring myself back. And I hope that the that were around for that, aren't irrevocably harmed because of my actions and my bad attitudes. But that movie, I honestly couldn't even watch it all the way through, but I have watched the TikToks on it. I know what happened. I know that it was a mental break, and I know all the things that happened in the movie, but it really did make me think about what happens, when the last straw breaks. What happens when that final thing happens that causes you to crack or that causes you to snap? If we can fix it, if we can do better, we need to try. And if we do have a mental break or if we do snap, I hope that there's someone there to help you, to be there for you so that you don't end up in a dire situation where you lose your life or, the life of your children or anything like that. Now, I hope that this video resonated with some people. It was heavy on me and I wanted to come to you guys and have this conversation. I hope that all of us are really doing well and that we don't have to deal with those things. But the reality is the reality. It is what it is. And there are people that are going through each and every day fighting for their lives. and they're not in the midst of a war, they're in the midst of an internal situation. I know that they're fighting for their lives, and I just want each and every one of you to know that if you are dealing with anything like that I'm praying for you. And I'm going to ask you guys to pray for me, because even though I've been through therapy and I've gotten some help and I've mended the fences, it's still hard. I still get triggered. Things still happen. So until the next time, the Seasoned Lady is signing off. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure your notifications are on so when I drop something new, you know all about it. Until the next time, toodles.